Production Director, Chris Larson, says we're live, right? Yes, sir. Here we go. All right. Good evening, everybody. December 13th. We getting close to ending the year out. Good to have so many people to hear a very large agenda tonight. So let's get right at it. We'll have our Pledge of Allegiance, and we're very honored to have the invocation tonight by Ethan Spira. He is, I think, a rather new pastor at Lord of Life Lutheran Church. You may know that up on 191st Street, just this side of the Moontown Roads. Great to have you with us. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor, if you'd hit that button on the mic, please.
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for our community here in Westfield, offering prayers and praise with grateful hearts for the blessing of the neighbors around us. In this city, you have given us strength by our diversity and unity in our spirit. Let that same spirit of unity rest over this time and place, that we may hear different opinions openly, speak our words graciously, and work not as individuals, but as a team for the mission of bettering our home. Set your angels to guard our coming in and going out. Give protection to our families, and at the conclusion of our time together tonight, grant us rest, that we may have the strength to continue faithfully serving as you have called us tomorrow in your new mercies for the day. This we ask with confidence, not in ourselves, but in your Son, our Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Good. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here. Before we open the meeting and we're thinking of people's prayers and thoughts, I have a request for you today. A couple of our first responders from our Westfield Fire Department were injured on duty responding in one of our ambulances. They were making the third response of the day to one of our healthcare facilities on Ferry Road, and they were hit at the corner of 146 and Ferry Road. They were taken to 86th Street in Indy. I would tell you, according to our responders that are here, they are home. They're okay. There was an injury in the other vehicle, but we probably lost an ambulance, it looked to me like, when I was there, unfortunately. So there'll be repercussions from that, from the other driver I know has some injuries, so your thoughts and prayers that we never forget that our first responders, they put it out there on the line every day. So keep them in your mind if you would, please. Mr. Johns?
Thank you, Mayor.
With that, would you run the meeting?
Absolutely. Sidney Gossard, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Joe Edwards.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Cindy Spalgeri.
Here.
Jake Gilbert.
Here.
Mike Johns.
Here.
Scott Fry.
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Cindy. The first item on the agenda tonight is, of course, the approval of the minutes from November 22nd. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Scott Willis and seconded by Jake Gilbert. Cindy, please call the roll.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeri.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the claims docket for December 13th, 2021. Counselors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket?
There's claims on there for BKD and Taft. I'm not sure what those are pertaining to. I assume they're the same, wrapped up into all this
Yes,
stuff we're going to talk about. So
They're on there, and yeah, they're.
I would approve all but those.
I'll second that.
Do I have a motion then to approve the docket as amended, all the claims with the exception of the BKD and TAF claims that appear on the December 13th docket?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a
I'll make a
by
motion to
Troy,
approve.
Second by Scott Fry.
about
Okay.
those claims.
Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Okay. Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeri,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Tonight, we've got special recognition, and I'm going to turn back over to Mayor Cook for recognizing the Westfield High School football team.
We are, Coach Gilbert, please. And I have 4 very special guys here tonight. We'd rather have your whole team here, but we didn't think they would all fit. So these are our 4 captains. Will Strong, please join me, Maximus Webster, Dalen Melanding, and McGuire Green. Guys, you are representing the Westfield football team, and you took us on one wild ride this past season. And our whole city is so very, very proud of you, and the notoriety that you brought to Westfield sports. I think your coach is rather proud of you. I'll ask him to say a few words, but I know there were some awards, one of which I know about, a couple others I was just told about tonight, so you're gonna have to help me upgrade these, but I know that Mr. Strong here was given the Mental Attitude Award of all of the players there in the finals, is that right? And when I was young, we called that the Trester Award back in basketball. Any of you remember that back in the pre-class days? And that was really the highest honor that anybody could have was given to them. Your mother has got to be so very proud of you. Congratulations. And the other awards, Coach, catch us up.
Well, coaching a football team's just kind of like a small little city. So a lot of people don't really understand all that goes into it, but these guys, there's 365 days in a year, and these guys have had more than 365 workouts and practices, because we do a lot of 2 and 3 a day type of workouts throughout the year. So we're very proud of them. They've represented our city very well. We have grown to over 180 members of our team, 20 of whom are female. A lot of people don't know that, but when you add our managers and athletic trainers, and we've had, over the years, a couple young lady players as well. So that's freshman through senior. We have been pretty successful on the field, but off the field, do a lot of charitable works. Right here, we commended one of our own, Caleb King, who some people in this room helped out, thank you. Caleb raised over $15,000 to fight childhood cancer. So we were very proud of assisting in that. We always do a great job with giving blood and Special Olympics and some things like that. But we also participated in a service organization kind of in conjunction with the Wellbeing Coalition, and kept 20 people from getting evicted from North Glen Trailer Park by painting and moving things, and just a lot of different service projects out there. And we're very proud of that as a football team as well. We do a lot of just real life things. Unfortunately, the last few years, we've lost 4 former members under the age of 21. So real life happens even in football programs. So the Disney dream about winning the state championships, exciting, but hey, we confront things like race. Dalen Blanding has been the lead in some of our equity efforts. Drug abuse. Unfortunately, we've had a couple former players stumble in that area. Cancer, we just lost one of our dearest, Janelle Rooney, just a matter of weeks ago. And I'm just really proud of the maturity our kids have shown, all in all. So on the field, Max Prep said we had the hardest schedule in Indiana, but we are back-to-back 12-2 records, 20 straight wins against HCC opponents, back-to-back state runner-up, and 4 times in 9 years going to the state championship. But these guys have been the catalyst for all of that, I think, from the very beginning. So they were in 2nd grade when we came here, and we're going to miss them a lot, Mayor. So.
I hear you're gonna have a couple new HCC teams in your league.
Yeah, we hope.
They want at you, don't they?
But they want to join, but we will play them anywhere, anytime, just in the non-conference.
Well, thank you, Coach. what you put into these guys. I mean, state champion, runners-up, what you put into this team, I've watched for many years, and it's remarkable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Ron. Is it okay if they go there? So they probably want to go. Thank you for that, everybody.
Thank you, Jake. The next item on our agenda, actually, Jake Gilbert's going to give us an update on the Wellbeing Coalition.
Can we pull that presentation up? Can we pull the presentation up right there? So I don't think we would we'll do this every year, but I thought it was appropriate for this year because the city's been so instrumental in getting this up and going. So I just wanted to quickly go through what we've accomplished in the last year, 2021. So we can go to the next slide. So here are our board members, excellent group of people that represent a lot of different areas of nonprofit experience. I know some people up here on the council have been very helpful for us and been involved, and some people in the audience have been helpful and involved, and we're so grateful. Those are the people who are on the board currently. Okay, next slide. Ann has been very helpful in helping us try to achieve 501c3 status. We're currently still waiting on our very efficient federal government, right, Ann? But we are hoping to have that status sometime soon. Is Sarah in the house? Sarah, if you would stand up. So Sarah is our first employee, and she's been fantastic. So I asked her to come tonight just for a couple minutes so that we could introduce her. But she is our program assistant and is working very, very hard. We've been an entire volunteer workforce, people involved. Even some people, like I said, even family members of members up here in the council and people in the audience. But Sarah's doing a great job, and I just wanted to introduce her so everyone could put a name with the face in case you see her around town. So thank you, Sarah. Okay, next slide. So just a few highlights from the past year. Outreach. We mentioned the North Glen relationship that's been built up. We were trying to do the same thing in Casey Acres. We've just spent a lot of time in those two communities, walking, getting to know residents, assisting, helping connect people to resources, whether that be a federal program about rent or, hey, let us roll up our sleeves and help you with this drainage issue. We've done anything and everything in between. We've partnered with the schools for a backpack initiative. We have a resource guide coming out that we want to be able to get to new residents and current residents that help our citizens just know what's out there from a resource standpoint. We can go to the next slide. On the mental health standpoint, we've trained over 50 people in QPR and psychological first aid. Our last one was focused specifically on veterans, which we found that there's an alarmingly high rate of veteran suicide in Hamilton County. So we're proud to have trained those 50 people. We've hosted some community-wide campaigns, including the You Are Enough campaign, which you still see a sign on Union about that. We hosted, we partnered and sponsored the Westfield High School Shamrock Save a Life Walk. We've done various trainings through those other entities you see there, Parent University, the Chamber, NAMI. We've posted things on the city website, so forth and so on. We have a great relationship with NAMI. The Stigma-Free Workplace is the initiative that we launched at the beginning of the year through the Chamber, and we've provided the 8-week mind-body medicine skills as well as another training, all of these free of charge. Next slide. Okay, and then the Connections Committee, we've partnered with 6 local organizations to just try to build and enhance and raise visibility. We've had over 500 people total at these events throughout the year. We've raised donations of $1,785, which is not a ton, but it's better than, to use a Joeism down there, better than a sharp stick in the eye, Joe. So it's something. We have
given some money back to the Fallen Hoosiers Hero Memorial just across the street, which we're proud of. We've given a little bit of money to Youth Assistance and Heart and Soul. And so we're just trying to be good partners there. And then you can see several local sponsors who have joined in and helped as well. And the last thing we did was the Friendsgiving dinner. We're doing a Christmas connection event for all of our volunteers tomorrow. Okay, next. Then the marketing committee has done some things to just enhance our ability to connect people and connect people to services, whether that be social media or other things to increase visibility, continually updating our website, so forth and so on. And then next, then what are we excited about for 2022? Our first Westfield Wellbeing Fair, which we think is going to be really, it'll probably be amazing in 2 years, hopefully. Hopefully it's off the ground and good next January. We'll be sending out information about that and highlighting past and future events and partnering in any which way we can. We're excited about the Westfield calendar. We're excited to help with Westfield Welcome, to be able to get more information about nonprofits, so forth and so on, to our families that move here next. I believe that's it. So that's as fast as I could go through that, but just wanted to thank everybody for your support of the Wellbeing Coalition over the last year, but wanted to show some of the things that we're proud of. If you're interested in more information, you can always reach out to me, or you can go to wellbeingcoalitionwestfield.com. It's as fast as I could do it. Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks for that opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor Gilbert. And we're going to look forward to see what happens next year with the Wellbeing Coalition.
Excited.
And it's growing. That's super. All right, back to our agenda, old business. All right. First item under old business is Ordinance 21-51, the additional appropriation / legal fees. This ordinance had a council introduction on November 22nd. We were having open for a public hearing this evening, along with adoption consideration tonight. And John Rogers is going to tell us about this ordinance.
President Johns, Mayor. As you know, you asked us to create a document for you at our last meeting, and I did that and forwarded it to you this evening. And tonight, we're here to move forward with the $845,000 request as shown in the existing appropriation, or in the ordinance.
Okay. And that would be the $845,000 plus the $115,000 for the clerk treasurer, so the ordinance is $1,557,000.
Yeah, again, I did not, on the phone when I spoke to you, I didn't do any, Cindy's ordinance, or Cindy's expenses were hers.
All right, well then why don't we, this requires a public hearing. So at, time is it 7:18, I'll open the floor to a public hearing. Kevin, do we have any cards at all?
We do not.
Okay, why don't we give it about a minute here and see if there are any call-ins or emails?
Marla, you can fill that out and give it to me after.
Looks like we have one resident.
Marla Ayler, 1602 East 203rd Street. The last time you guys had a public hearing on this, I spoke and discussed the scope with you, and my opinion hasn't changed. There was so much looked at that was outside of the scope, and to find out tonight that we're now over $1 million with very little, in my opinion, to have gleaned from some of that was out of scope. To make what I will call a Joe Edwards analogy, to me, it's like hiring someone to come paint the shed at my house and have them paint the house, and then ask for the money on it. Interestingly, I also have a 3-car garage that's detached from my home. So imagine if they thought they were painting everything, but somehow missed that. That's what the investigation looked like to me. There is some valuable information in it, and I look forward to seeing what you do with that regarding policy, but there was a huge portion of it that for me wasn't worth the paper it was written on. So to pay $1 million for it, I'm just gonna ask you to say no. Pay for the part that mattered, pay for the part they were hired to do. Thanks.
Kevin, do we have any call-ins at all? Okay, and at 7:20, we'll close the public hearing. Questions, comments from counselors?
I guess I'm the person that asked, that John and, well, it wasn't my suggestion that John and Cindy Gossard get together, but I thought they had got together and resolved this. It doesn't look like it's completely resolved to me, but maybe I'm not understanding all of it, but.
Joe, what we received was, we received information from Cindy's attorneys and documentation from them, which totaled out to the $155,000, which is what Cindy is asking for the appropriation under the fund that ends in 8330.
Okay.
So we have received the full documentation on
Okay,
that.
I see my computer's not working,
Okay.
and maybe the other Cindy can help me here, but,
My concern is that, and again, I had asked that both parties, Cindy did, but that John Rogers take a look at the expenses for our legal and consulting fees for the year and divide them into 4 categories. Those expenses that have already been paid, those expenses that have been received by the clerk's office, the invoices, and we, the council, have asked not to pay yet, those invoices that have been received by the city, but for some reason are sitting on someone's desk and have not been sent over to the clerk's office, and those expenses that are anticipated to come in before the end of the year. All right, so really into those 4 categories. I've received today from John Rogers a list broken down as to for the appropriation legal fees, which was broken down into those 4 categories as I had requested, but which totals $1,130,000 and not $845,000. So basically, it totals $285,177 more than what is in the appropriation. That is some concern. Further diving into that list, I noticed that approximately $430,000 of that was invoices that are anticipated but haven't been received yet. Well, we, as a city, we work on a yearly budget. So, and we've already heard from the clerk that any invoices that are to be paid this year have got to be received by December 21st in her office. So basically, John, is what I'm hearing from you is you're telling us that within the next 7 days, we're going to receive $430,000 of invoices, if the numbers are right here. Is that?
That's pretty correct. Those invoices are what I have found and uncovered. And again, to go back to the email I sent you earlier, that of that delta of 285K, 185K of that is probably bond reimbursement type activity. So we've upfronted, we've paid for services that are going to be reimbursed through bond issuance.
All right.
And then the remainder of that is write-offs and adjustments. You asked for everything, so I presented everything because I wanted you to make sure that you were aware of the breakdown as I found it.
Okay.
Sent that to you, but that's the reason that's the reason I started out, we're back at that current appropriation. That's the number that's the number we need.
So the final number then for the appropriation from the administration of $845,557 is accurate.
That is correct.
Counselors?
But I have one other question, or not question, but opinion, I guess, it's more properly put. I never did get a breakdown of what exactly we're paying for. And it is said that, well, you know, this is client lawyer privilege. But I'd like to know what went on there in this client lawyer privilege. I'd like to know what we're paying for. If I go to a car dealer and buy a Cadillac, I don't want to get a Ford. And I have some trepidation. I would like to get this behind us, but man, what a mess.
I would echo Joe's sentiments. I've asked numerous times, I want everybody to hear this. I've asked numerous times by email. I've asked the mayor, I've asked everybody for the invoices. Not even a response, hey, go flip sand, nothing. No response. No response. No response. I've received Webster's. I've received detailed invoices. I mean, for God's sakes, man. I mean, if somebody is paying a bill, I would expect that you actually get the detail. Is it that tough? I mean, and I would agree. If it's outside of the scope of what we were going to get, then we're not going to pay. I'm not going to approve it. Everybody else can vote their way. I mean, just a simple email, a simple, respectful email. Hey, Troy, we're not going to provide this. Okay, that'd be better than nothing.
Has Taft offered to sit down with you and go over the invoices?
At their office. That was the only offer I ever received. You've
I
offered,
think-
no. He's offered to other people. You offered Jake to sit down with him.
Okay.
But me, no. I said, hey, you're the one supplying the invoice. Just send them to me. It's
I
really
think
simple.
that Taft offered to sit down at any location with anybody
Oh my
to go over the invoices.
Okay, folks, this is what you're hearing. I mean, I see a lot of lights going off. No, nothing of substance. So.
Well, did he or did he not offer to show you invoices? Yes or
No.
no?
No.
Okay.
No.
I've got a question. If I'm understanding the numbers as presented by John, as discussed by John, I guess, what we're asked to vote on tonight is real close to $1 million even. From what I understand, the numbers that include what's expected between now and the 21st, we're looking at 1.13, is that correct? Another $130,000? Just a procedural question here I'm trying to understand. If we approve this tonight, I guess a two-part question. If we approve this tonight, we still have to approve each expenditure. We're just allocating the funds. We'd still have to approve each expenditure on its own merit, first of all. Secondly, what would we need to do to accommodate the extra $130,000 that is brought before us tonight? Is that a second vote for appropriation, or how is that even going to work? How is that procedurally even possible at this late stage?
I feel like I'm watching The Wizard of Oz. You know the scene where they say, pay no attention to the little man behind the curtain, right? Just somebody's pulling all the levers, except we don't have the information. I mean, you know, it's like.
You know, I'll just say this. I think throughout many of these issues, this administration has offered information and information and information. During the months between the meetings, We have tried on all different subjects, from State Road 32 to Grand Junction to now this. And we always end up, our people, Mr. Johns, they've worked with you, all of you, and every time we get to this meeting, we hear the same thing. We don't have the information. And we have made every effort possible to get you information before this meeting.
So I'll still ask my question.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Every effort possible to get you the information. How many emails have I sent? How many emails have I sent since our last meeting? Since our last meeting 2 ago? How many? Because I've copied everybody here on it. How many have I sent?
I don't know.
How many have you responded to? How about that?
I don't know how many.
I mean, hey, everybody can get anything they want. How many have you responded to? Folks, zero. I got that one nailed down. That's nothing.
Scott, could you re-ask that question? I wonder, because I had a similar question.
Sure. My question is this, and again, round numbers, we're looking at an appropriation tonight that we're being asked to vote on for $1 million. We're asking to appropriate those funds, and again, two, I guess, procedural questions. If those funds are appropriated tonight, we're not approving spending those funds until those expenses are brought to us line by line, and we had the opportunity to review the invoices and make sure everything was, again, as pointed out, within the scope of the investigation and what we agreed to pay for. I want to make sure that is correct. Secondly, with the numbers that were discussed tonight, we're over $1 million by, and again, round numbers here, $130,000. If we appropriate $1 million tonight, we're still short of $130,000. Procedurally, knowing that the window is very small here, how do we make that happen before the 21st? If we can at all.
It's my understanding, okay, to answer your first question. We have an appropriation before us tonight for $1,557,000, okay. That appropriation has been appropriately noticed, all right? We had an open hearing this evening. We can't go back to the well on this. This is over. The DLGF funds have to be spent by the end of the year. There's not enough time to have another notice and change that number. So that number is the number of the appropriation that we would be approving for this year, 2021. Those funds then, once they're appropriated, they're sitting in the accounts, okay? At that point in time, we don't spend any of that money, as I understand it, okay? We then take a look at each line item and go through the invoices and approve them. And they should total out to be the $1,557,000, all right? Now, from a timing standpoint, that really needs to get done within like the next week or so, because they've got to be approved and expended by the end of the year. There are some carryover items that the DLGF State Board allows you to carry through into next year. Those items are things like your December gas bill, your December water bill, but they are not legal expenses. These need to be expended by the end of the year.
If you approve the appropriation, that'll go into admins, consulting, and attorney lines. When you get the bills, because we haven't got anything from TAP since August. So when you get the bills, then you guys go through them. If it's not what you want to pay, whatever money's left at the end of the year just goes back into the general fund. It doesn't get carried forward.
So thank you for the information there, both of you. Again, to follow up on that, or to push that farther down the road, I want to try to make sure I understand this. We're informed tonight there's an additional $130,000 that we're expecting between now and December 21st that is not going to be covered by this appropriation.
Is that what you're saying, John?
$130,000. Could you help me?
The
Is this the amount
That's
that
the-
is
Well,
you're
John-
saying?
Yeah, because we're looking at, right now, we have the delta of 285, right?
John, according to your document here, you
Yeah.
say total request, 1,130,000.
Right, but that includes the delta, right, that we discussed. So we've got.
That's where you've lost me.
we've-
That's where you've
Okay,
lost me.
all right,
I don't-
we'll start
There's no
there.
delta in
Perfect,
here.
all right, so that is everything, as requested, everything. In that number is $185,000 of legal bond fees, I'll just call them, right? That will be reimbursed for as we get the bond proceeds, right? In addition to that, there's $100K in there that is write-offs, correction, it's everything.
Okay.
What you have in front is, as I was requested to do, I literally, Mike, I spent the whole weekend, going and pulling stuff, and that's everything.
So the 185 is money going back into that fund.
Right.
And the 100 is write-offs. So there's no 130, there's no,
Perfect.
845
Okay.
is what's being asked. I want to address a couple things. One, I don't know who gave information about SBOA and DLGF not allowing expenditures. December bills come in January. You can keep the books open until the books are closed, and you credit those amounts against the appropriation for this year. That is,
That's not how I do
ask
it.
anybody at SBOA and DLGF, that's
No.
how it's done, number one. Number two, Mr. Patton, boy, I don't know, I really don't want to get into this because I want to move the ball forward with the city. I don't want to get into back and forth with you. What you said is just patently false. Since January of this year, I have said over and over, I will sit down with you, I will go through the bills. We're carrying forward what Mr. Zager did for 20 years, and I will do it anywhere. And I have said that, and sir, I sent you an email September 10th, and I sent it through share file. You didn't even open it. I cannot sit by while this city, to the world and to the business community, shows this kind of disdain for the hardworking people that are providing this information over the weekend and are working their butts off, understaffed, to meet every demand. And you are, I have to tell you, as a legal representative for the city, not paying your bills.
Your
paying
bill,
your
your
expo-
bill.
No, it's legal and consulting, sir, it's not
Oh
just
my
mine.
gosh.
Not paying your bills exposes you to liability. It is a scar from the business community and any developer looking to invest here. And number three, any sort of financing that the city wants to get down the line, with money, the price of money already going up next year, the Fed has indicated. They will look at things like this. And the price you're paying for the same dollar that Hamilton County or Noblesville or Carmel is paying will be more. Please take the opportunity, call me. My cell phone is 317-828-9482. You've had it for a year. Please call me. I'll meet you anytime. I'll discuss the scope and the breadth of the work that is done for this city. Most of it is real estate work. Most of it is high-end development work. Most of it moves this city forward. And all the other consultants that are included in this amount do the same thing for this city and every other city. I'm sorry, Mr. Patton, but I cannot sit by and say, and listen to somebody say you've never had the opportunity to review the bills. That is just
What-
patently false.
You know what? With all due respect, you're talking about your own bills. I can't see the scars because the blood is all over us, okay? When did we get the report from BKD? Does anybody remember when they presented that? What was the date of that?
6 weeks ago.
Was it October?
October what?
Was it, I think it was October.
October something. Let's see, you sent me in September that I could see all the bills. That's funny because we didn't even have them yet.
I still don't have them.
We still don't have them.
If I can say one thing here, as we look to move this city forward, I think one thing that we could do is when we're talking about processes and procedures, is that when they come in, first of all, the city should ask to be billed on a timely basis. we should receive our invoices on a timely basis. We should not be looking at invoices in December for June or July or August, all right? So it's reasonable that we ask our vendors, our suppliers, to invoice us on a timely basis, as you would with any other business. It's also reasonable that once the invoices have been received, we get them to the clerk's office as expeditiously as possible. So we don't have John Rogers telling us, this is the amount of the invoices that are sitting on somebody's desk that haven't been sent to the clerk from July and August, when we're in December. And I think moving forward next year, if we can address that process, we won't be in a position like this next year. We'll be paying our bills on a timely basis, getting them to the clerk treasurers on a timely basis.
Those are fair requests,
Is
absolutely.
that fair?
I do have a.
Because as a council, when we see the claims and our last request is from August, we don't know if we have not been billed for September, or if the administration is holding the invoice, or if the clerk treasurer is sitting on it. We don't know. Our job is, to vet things and so forth and so on, but well said, thank you.
Yeah, we can't put them in NAV or put them in to be approved unless we have them, which we do have some in there that we've reminded department heads to, Todd, to approve them, so we could get them on the docket sheet, so they're not on here. But to the state board issue, every year we have a cutoff date because it does take a while to close the month, the quarter, and the year. So you can't just keep sending invoices in. They need to be in by a certain date so we can get our work done. We do this every year. So,
We at the administration will make every effort to expedite the billing process with all of our vendors. And at the risk of continuing, Mr. Patton, our banter, I just can't let ride the fact that I think you implied that I have not returned your emails. I show my last email from you was dated July 19th, of which I answered you.
You must have me blocked.
No, sir, I do not have
I
you
emailed
blocked.
everybody on this staff. Does anybody else remember an email that I sent to him asking for that information?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I do not have you blocked, and that's the very last email I've ever, I also have a phone number, and you are please welcome to give me a call.
I do wish to say that
It's unbelievable.
our attorney, the city attorney, did offer me the chance to come down to his office and review the documents. There was a stipulation that there would be certain documents that would not be available for review, right?
Yes, sir, and I offered to meet you up here.
And
I
I-
live just 3 miles away, so it was more convenient for
Well,
everybody.
I don't remember that part, but anyhow, I did answer you and say, I'm not coming.
That's correct.
So I just
That's
want
up to you. I can only make the offer.
Well, but if I'm not gonna see the whole load, why waste your time?
Well, it's for the same reason, sir, that, if I were to request Ms. Poindexter's communications with you, she would redact certain information. I would do the same.
Okay, well, that didn't work for me. I'm not in the legal
I understand
business.
that. And most of the information, by the way, by and large, would be fully open.
Counselors?
John, I had a question regarding the amounts, the consulting amount, and then the attorney/consulting amount. Yeah, I guess my perception is that the top number, attorney/consultant, essentially has to do with lawsuits, and that the middle number, consulting, essentially has to do with the report. What I'd like to know, just in terms of even just how well we've executed our budgeting, is, okay, that's why we have this overage based on these events that are not going to be annual, or no, we actually used more consulting than we had budgeted for, or maybe there's other lawsuits that, people who have sued us has nothing to do with this, which I'm sure that that's the case. But, you know, without seeing the invoices and the breakdowns, I would just like a little more information in general. I think the public should hear that as well.
The specifics of the type of legal actions Manny can probably better address, because it's a pretty long list that covers a lot of the activity.
Sure, I
The-
don't want to, John, if Mr. Gilbert, I can't speak to, I don't want to breach privilege, right, with the city. There are about 18 or so eminent domain actions that
We
move
don't,
projects
I
along.
understand the
Sure.
sensitivity of all that.
But categorically, I can tell you, there are about 18 or so of those that were still pending for years, that when we got here, had to be ramped up very quickly. Unfortunately, there was a cost associated. You know, putting the clerk lawsuit aside, we're moving
So we didn't
past
budget
that.
for that increase.
That was not budgeted, right? So some of those were sitting for 2 or 4 years, had to get to mediation, and Ann can attest to this, had to prep for trial, mediation, depositions. That kind of activity should have stopped 2 years ago. You file those, and within 6 or 8 months, those are usually done. The GEFT lawsuit didn't account for that going to the Seventh Circuit and the amount of unbelievable expense that entails. Those are just 2 of kind of the examples from a lawsuit standpoint that weren't accounted for. And then you can never account for employee issues, employment issues that come down the pike, and other folks suing the city you have to respond to, frivolous or not. You know, there was somebody suing the police department, for example. You just have to deal with that. None of that is weaved into this.
Joe, you had asked me a question earlier, excuse me, earlier about my 155. I was like 97,000 negative, because at the beginning of 2021, my legal line was $5,000. But I got sued 3 times, so we had to pay legal fees. But, so my 97 of that is already been paid. It's just covering what I've paid. So for the rest of the year is the rest of it, what, 55 to 60,000? That's all mine is, so I just want to make that clear.
Counselors, it's. Question, Jay?
Just real quick to kind of round that out. And so some of the other items that are covered under these categories would be developer agreements, the work that FSG does for us, the work that O.W. Crone does for us. There's a lot of other types of activity depending on what we're looking at the time. And those types of expenses are what we try to check in these areas.
So I guess that was the question. That was the question, is some of that's baked in here, but that wasn't then budgeted for, and we went over in some of those areas.
Some of those areas, right. A developer agreement comes yes, you're right. Just leave it at that, yeah.
Bottom line is, John, we're not a couple thousand, we're $1 million over budget, and that's what we have an appropriation for, we're looking at tonight, correct?
That is what we're looking for, is to pay the bills.
All right, counselors, would be my recommendation that we go ahead and approve this appropriation as it's written. That will put the money into those 3 accounts, and then through our oversight process, we review, we sit down with Manny and take a look at the Taft accounts invoices, and we look at any other invoices that come through onto Cindy's desk. And that would go through our normal claims process, docket process. So what we're doing tonight essentially is we are approving the appropriation to put those funds into the city account. Does that make sense?
It does. President Johns, I'd like to make one more comment or make one more suggestion if possible. I understand your recommendation. I'm looking at this, looking at the calendar. Again, very, very small window to act to get these claims paid. Is it conceivable, is it possible that before we leave this meeting tonight, we have a date on the calendar where we will sit down locally, not downtown, where we will sit down here or at the City Services Building and have a group of counselors review the invoices and make the determination as to what is appropriate, what was within the scope, and what we will be paying moving forward. In my opinion, without that commitment, there's really no need to do this.
Manny, is there a way for us just to have an executive session to review these bills?
No,
Because
and
they're attorney bills.
that, I appreciate Mr. Fry's recommendation. That would violate open door law, because then if you're having successive meetings that end up being a quorum, you're violating the Bobby Knight rule, and you can't have that. I will meet you guys, I'll work with my schedule. I can do a share screen on Zoom.
Can
So
you
would
email
you say
them?
you
Can you email them?
Basically, three of us, is that what
Beg
we're
your
talking
pardon?
about? A group of three?
Yeah, so you can, the problem, Mr. Johns, you do a group of three, and you have another group of two on the same issues in a successive manner. That's an open door law violation potentially.
We're talking about the
That I wanna-
examination,
that I
why
wanna
don't we just do
avoid.
it in the public eye? And everybody say, I mean.
Well, that defeats the
we
purpose
have a
of
complete,
keeping this
I'm not
information
talking to you right
privileged.
now. It's a complete disconnect. I mean, Andy Cook and I met about a month ago, and you and I actually had this conversation in your office a month ago, after my email. And by the way, Chris Larson, I would like for you to check the IT, because I'm looking at my records, and not only did I email Andy on November 9th, but I emailed him on November 1st, and he actually let me know about something back, and again on August. That's funny, because I don't think he's received anything from me from June, but he's replying, so it's either somebody's using his email, something's going on. I mean, not to keep beating a dead horse, I am an absolute no on this. I'd pay Webster's bill because he actually got the information. Hey, amazingly enough, the guy emailed me. He actually emailed.
Anyway, I can, over Zoom or Teams, I can put up a share screen. This can be done very easily.
I'd like copies. I'd like copies.
Isn't an executive session, it's legal to have all the council together and you can discuss legal issues. So I'm not sure.
And Cindy, while Manny and I love to disagree,
Yeah, we do
doing
too.
our respective jobs, I agree with Manny. This is not an appropriate subject for
Okay.
an executive session.
But it's fair to assume we can determine 3 people, we can get a date scheduled on the calendar before we leave this meeting this evening for 3 people. Yes? Because again, from my perspective, here's what's happening. Numbers, we're evaluating different things, we're looking at different things. I'm not gonna say things change, I won't go that far. But we keep kicking the can down the road and we're not getting anywhere. And to get somewhere, we need to look at the invoices. We need to look at those invoices here in Westfield, not somewhere downtown. You'd mentioned a minute ago, I think in your comment, your reply to Councilor to Councilor Edwards, that it'd be more convenient for you to do it here anyway. So, again, is it conceivable to get that on the calendar before we leave this chamber tonight with those that can make it work, so that we at least have council representation looking at something that we're then going to be asked to pay?
Just like I've offered for a year, sure.
So I'll take that.
So if I may, I think you could do 2 things. One, you could notice a special council meeting, and that's the only agenda item. The second thing is you could have an ad hoc committee of 3, and because once again, I'm gonna have to say I agree with Manny, after that meeting of 3, if he gets a request for 1 or 2 more, then Manny's gonna have to reject those, because the risk is you're having serial meetings, you violate the Bobby Knight rule. So
Depends
those,
on the timing, yeah, within
Right.
7 days.
Right.
If it's outside
So-
of that, it's okay.
and with the time we're talking about, yes. So I think those are your 2 options. Either you notice a special meeting, and then anybody who wants to, or you choose 3, and you meet here, if
There's
that's
one
what
where
you
you could you do 3, and then after 7 days pass, you can do another couple, so to not violate, but yeah.
Can I query the council and see if, are we willing to go with 3 of our council members to form an ad hoc committee to do an examination, meet with Manny and go through? Is that something that we all can agree on?
I'm assuming, Ann, that those 3 can share with the rest of the council their findings, or is that a violation of?
again, they can share. You just don't want to have another meeting with Manny in a close time frame. And I take a more conservative approach than Manny does. I don't want you to have emails going back and forth. One email sharing information based on what the ad hoc committee found, fine.
Could I have a motion then on that from someone? We have an ad hoc committee formed?
I move that we form an ad hoc committee to study the invoices from ordinance, related to ordinance 21-51.
I'll second that.
Can you vote? Cindy, you want to call the vote?
This is to form the committee.
An ad hoc committee, yes.
Okay. Okay. Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
I appreciate the effort. I just want an email to everybody on the examination, the invoices. I'm a no.
Okay. Motion carries 6-1.
All right. And I think can we determine who wants to be on that committee? Who has the time over the next, the 10 days to, spend a half a day to a day probably?
I can do it, I'm in town.
I can do it. I'm off school next week, so.
Does that decision need to be made tonight as to who the three will be? We don't have a date yet, do we?
Well, the other question, so it would help us, I think, when you say 7 days can pass and then additional people could see, it would help us to know under this time frame if it's truly feasible that in the next 2 days, you could meet with 3 people and then a week could pass and you could meet again.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I mean, I think you and Mr. Willis, whoever the third one is, let's get together as soon as this meeting's over and I'll share my calendar.
Why don't we just do the Oversight Committee? I mean, we got an initial summary of all these invoices. It wasn't detailed by any means, but we got a summary from you, from the Oversight Committee, so maybe we just stand up the Oversight Committee for this particular evolution.
I would like to see the Oversight Committee meet quickly, and then after 7 days, if 3 additional counselors wanted to meet, they would have the opportunity to.
Yeah, so the only issue with the Oversight Committee, because it's a formal committee of the council, anything provided to it will be public, which defeats the purpose of presenting and keeping some of this privilege.
Let's make it
I
ad
will
hoc.
work out with
Let's
you,
make it
Mr.
ad hoc.
Willis, and whoever the third person is, to meet as soon as we can, get our schedules together.
If it's public, but.
Well, it's just, it's my, I know you're okay with it, I'm generally okay with it, I just don't want to share confidences and potentially confidential information that would be okay for you to get with the public and somebody who might be
Okay.
within a lawsuit with us, like Geft, who might use that against us. That's the only issue.
Manny, in all seriousness, I know you and I don't like each other, it's fine.
I like you fine, sir.
I don't, so but look, it's fine, is what I'd like to just reiterate though, just to be fair. Because I don't care about the outdoor billboard. I mean, this whole thing is predicated on this whole examination and
For
review.
you, maybe that outdoor billboard is a national case that's from the Supreme Court.
Again, I
It
don't need
affects
to, I don't need to
how
see those
planning and zoning is
invoices.
for every city in the country. But go ahead, please.
I don't need to see those invoices. The invoices that I have asked for are pursuant to this overage, basically due to the examination and work outside of the scope of that examination. So, I mean, and I'm being serious, I'm saying those are the invoices that I want to see. If the Oversight Committee is going to look at those things, that's what I would like to be seen. And if the public sees those things, so be it. I mean, they are the public, they're the taxpayers. We are the taxpayers.
I want to be clear, I am offering to discuss the city's legal bills from Taft. I do not have access to, nor have I seen, BKD's, Baker Tilly's, or Zach Klutz's bills. So to the extent, Mr. Patton, that's what you want, I make that request to BKD, and if they want to do it, that's A-okay by me.
But Taft oversaw the examination, right?
Zach Klutz did, yes.
Taft
So,
oversaw
no,
the examination.
That's incorrect, Zach Klutz did. So if you want to make that separate request to BKD Baker Tilly, that is absolutely your prerogative. I don't have access to this.
this is, you see, I mean, what's going on? I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm not trying to split hairs, but it's like, Taft did oversee the examination. It's just not that hard. For God's sakes, so we're already back to the square one. It's like, well, you can't see this. Nope, Zach Klutz did. Okay, so Taft. Nope, Zach Klutz did. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like the runaround. I mean, you guys can get the invoices, but if you don't get those invoices on the BKD and everyone else, then what's the point? Because that's what in fact, when Marla Ayler's talking, she's talking about things that were done outside of the scope of the examination. And not to keep beating a dead horse, because that thing's been dead and turned into, belts at this point. But, I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about invoices that should have never been invoiced to begin with. But
Well, I totally disagree with that. Taft gave us invoices. We contracted, BKD gave us invoices. Isn't that right?
who contracted?
I'm assuming, yeah.
I'm sorry, who contracted with BKD?
I believe BKD, did they submit invoices, or was it all through Taft?
I have seen invoices from BKD in the research that I did. So,
Yeah. Right.
Troy, can you be on this ad hoc committee? Would you be on
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay, then I'm going to recommend that if Manny, if you can get with us, email me, I'll get with the guys, or email all of us, okay. Give us a couple dates, how soon we can meet, we should meet soon. And I'm going to suggest that we have an ad hoc committee of Scott Willis, Jake Gilbert, and Troy Patton. Okay, I think it's important that we can have the Oversight Committee, as you said, and the Oversight Committee is good because Joe's got a CPA background. The only other CPA we have is Troy, so Troy's got a CPA background, so maybe a little bit of an uncomfortable meeting between the two of you, but I think you guys can get through it, and I think that we should do it as quickly as possible.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, not uncomfortable for me at all. Happy to discuss it.
So,
But I want to make sure, we're discussing the Taft bills that we've sent. Okay.
obviously, you can only do the task.
Happy to answer those, yes, okay.
So we have a committee, and before we leave tonight, after the meeting, we will have a date very, very soon to make that happen.
Happy to accommodate people's schedules.
Excellent, thank you.
Contrary to
Yeah, so
popular
my
belief,
question,
this
sorry,
is
Scott, I didn't mean to cut you. So
not
my
really-
question is then, are we not addressing this appropriation tonight? And
No.
There's
I'd
still a
like to-
vote on the
I
appropriation.
would like to have a motion, if we would, with respect to this appropriation.
Yeah, I have, DLGF, tomorrow is the deadline.
Tomorrow is the
to
deadline.
send
Yeah.
these
Can't
appropriations
kick
to
the can
DLGF.
further.
Can I make a motion to approve ordinance 2151?
I'll second that.
Motion has been made to approve ordinance 2151 by Cindy Spaljeric, seconded by Scott Willis. Cindy Gosser, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards. Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Cindy Spaljeric.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
No.
Okay, motion carries 6-1.
Moving on in our agenda, the next item is ordinance 2155, which is the additional appropriation for the fire. It has council introduction on November 22nd, open for public hearing this evening, adoption consideration this evening, and I believe Chief Gaylord is going to share the contents of that with us.
Good evening, Rob Gaylor, Westfield Fire Department. What we have is ordinance 2155, which is a request for additional funds for the training facility. This is a fund that we manage. These funds do not come out of our general budget. It's actually part of its own account. We're just asking to spend money out of that account that was not line itemed out in the original budget of 21.
Okay, this item is up for a public hearing, so At 8:04, we'll open the public hearing. Kevin, do we have any cards at this point? Why don't we give it about 30 seconds here or so and see if we have any call-ins. Okay, at 8:11, we'll close the public hearing. Counselors, any questions, comments?
Chief, how many dollars are we talking about here?
$26,500.
All right. Well, it's hardly worth the trip, is it?
Any other comments, questions? Can I have a motion on this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by
Joe.
by Joe. And Joe Edwards and seconded by Troy Patton. Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Yep. Cindy Spalgeri,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
The next item on our agenda this evening is ordinance 21-56, additional appropriation for public works. This also had a council introduction on November 22nd. It has a public hearing this evening. It's up for adoption consideration this evening. And Jeremy Lawler will explain this request to us.
Good evening. Thank you all for the time. As introduced, requesting additional appropriation to the 264 fund, which is road impact fees, in the amount of $938,390 to cover a financial commitment to the construction of 175th Street in association with the Trails development there, and an appropriation in the 209 fund, which is performance maintenance. It is a cash in lieu of bond fund in the amount of $237,530 for the reconstruction of Spring Mill Point Drive via a development agreement with that developer. So it is as it was introduced, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
This ordinance is also up for public hearing. We'll open the public hearing at 8:12. And Jeremy, any cards?
No cards.
Kevin, rather? Okay. Let's just give it about 30 seconds here.
I'll get you a card.
Okay.
Okay. You know my name. Linda Nass, 1122 East 161st Street. Well, my question on these is, are these per developer agreements? Are these public developer agreements on both of them? And can we get a little more detail? Because the top one is almost $1 million. So does everyone, before we vote, understand exactly what this is paying for? Because I'm finding more and more that there are developer agreements in existence that commit us to pay for things or buy things or things that are defaulted on, we're now responsible for as a city, even us as an RDC. And it starts to become concerning because I don't have a list of those documents. I don't have availability of those documents on the city website. And for example, there's one that may be coming forward at the RDC where if a developer defaults on a bank loan, we signed an agreement years ago that said we'll cover the $6 million. We'll own the land, but we'll cover the $6 million. And I just want more detail when we're starting to move money into these funds on exactly what are we covering. Are these good decisions? Are these good agreements that we've made? Or should we maybe be reconsidering these and who's making them and how are they making them? And although they probably hit some legal line, I still don't think, like when Joe came on the council, I remembered his thing was unfunded liabilities. What are our unfunded liabilities? I don't think you know today what your unfunded liabilities are. You may have seen some of them coming soon, and this one is $1 million. So just like as the public to know more information about this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Linda. All right.
For the sake of the council, I'm
Yeah,
happy to.
let me close the public hearing then. Okay, I think that's it for the public hearing. Let's close the public hearing at 8:14.
To address a
Jeremy,
couple of Mrs. Nas's comments, both were absolutely approved development agreements. Both can be found via a simple search on the internet. They are both, any impact fee agreements are approved by the Board of Public Works via the delegation that's been given to them, and I'm also happy to share them with you if you'd like. As I described at the last meeting, the 264 appropriation was a commitment for reconstruction of 175th Street, which is a road that is required to be built by the 32 overlay. Because it is required, they are entitled to reimbursement of those construction costs. This was a settlement of a lawsuit that we were a third party of because we were holding funds. The road is built, the money is spent, there's no additional spend associated with this. This is an appropriation that will write the record book, the financial record. The 209 is an agreement with that developer because of a failed construction of a roadway by the previous contractor when Tractor Supply was constructed. In many, many efforts and many years, specifically about 7 years of trying to get reimbursed for this, Meyer was coming, more development along the Spring Mill Point development was coming. We could not wait anymore to try to get our money back. So we entered into a development agreement with that developer as they were coming through and extending this road, reconstruct this, make it right. We will give you credits and we will continue the fight on the back end to try to get our money back. Does that make sense?
So, and as I recall, Jeremy, that 938,000,
Mm-hmm.
was part of that interpleader agreement with the court?
Yeah, it was a motion of interpleader, effectively issuing our courts, or our funds that we owed for the road to the court. The overall agreement was in the neighborhood of $1.7 million to build that. We assigned some to, we didn't, the developer assigned some of his credits away to Crew. They assigned some credits to Midland Atlantic, which built the remainder of the road behind Burger King and Denny's and tied it into Westfield Park Road ultimately. So those monies were either assigned and or paid out prior to this. This was the remainder of the balance owed, or our financial commitment to the development agreement. We issued our money to the court. I have no idea where that suit is now because we are no longer involved.
Right, and this was brought before the council, I think, back in August, July, or
I
August.
believe so. I can't remember
Yeah,
the month, but
so-
yes, I
so-
brought the interpleader
But
to
you
you
were
all.
asking for the funds now, just because that was not anticipated?
We're asking
and
for the
that's why-
additional appropriations so
Went
that
over
way
budget.
we don't go over budget in the road impact fee fund.
Okay.
It's not new money, correct?
Councilors, comments, questions?
If I'm not mistaken, I just refresh my memory here. Manny, I believe on that 237, I think this is the same item where when this was introduced, you'd referenced that usually we have pretty significant success in recouping some of those funds. Is that correct? Legally?
No, Mr. Johns lauded my abilities, and I agreed with him as a joke. Jeremy sent me the materials for going against the bond, and we're in the process of doing that. And I can update the council accordingly once we get a little deeper into that. Those companies are tough to get, but we'll do our best.
And to further that, there's close to 200 pages worth of documentation that I sent over of many, many hours and weeks of work that my staff has done to try to put all the supporting documentation together. And now I'm at the hands of Manny's great lawyering skills.
Excellent, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Can I have a motion regarding ordinance 2156?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 21-56.
Second.
Second. Motion made by Scott Willis and seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy Gosser, could you call the roll, please?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Jeremy. The next item under old business, ordinance 21-53, elected official salary ordinance. This ordinance had a council introduction on November 22nd. It's up for adoption consideration this evening. Counselors, do you have any question regarding this ordinance? This is an ordinance where we're looking at a 4% increase for the elected officials, which mirrors the 4% increase for the salary.
I'll just make a quick comment. I don't want to beat this horse to death. I know we've had conversations around public hearings and what have you. And I understand that traditionally we haven't done that, and we won't be tonight. I would encourage future councils. We're going to the taxpayer asking for a pay raise. And I understand it's not a lot, and I understand it's a cost of living adjustment, but I do believe it is prudent and fair to give taxpayers a chance to voice their concerns or their thoughts on that merit increase, or whatever kind of increase you want to call it. So I understand we're not going to do it tonight, that's fine, but I would encourage us in the future to offer that up. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Councilor Willis. Any other comments? That's it. Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2153?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Cindy Spillier, seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy Gasser, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry.
No.
Scott Fry.
No.
Troy Patton.
No.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
No.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 4-3.
Moving on to new business. Resolution 21-139, amending the resolution 21-132, declaring an ERA /ortho Indy. It's up for adoption consideration this evening, and Kai Chuck, I believe, is going to explain this.
Evening, councilors. Thank you. For the record, Kai Chuck from the Economic Development Department. This is the amendment to 21-132, the tax abatement for Ortho Indy, specifically Section 10. Scroll down to Section 10. Giving the option for a clawback if the surgery center is not completed by 5 years timeframe of the abatement given to Ortho Indy. The petitioner's consultant, Jim Ake, is in attendance, but he does not pretend to present, but he and myself are available to answer any questions.
Councilors, any questions?
Just one procedurally. In the text of the resolution, I believe it is Section 3, it talks about a public hearing, which will be on the 27th, it says. And so are we okay to adopt this? I'm a bit concerned how that works. Is that public hearing a confirmatory kind of thing?
Yeah, good question, yeah, because it gets, so this is an amendment of the declaratory resolution, so you should approve this tonight. If you desire, you can approve this tonight. And then the confirmatory resolution is what you need to, is precipitated by a hearing. So the hearing and then the confirmatory resolution would be set for December 27th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Can I then have a motion to approve Resolution 21-139?
Motion to approve Resolution 21-139.
Second.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy Gasser, please call the roll.
Okay, Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. The following three resolutions all deal with amendments to three different economic development areas, TIF areas. I think we're going to have Jim Treat is going to be on the line, and John Rogers is going to explain. Jim Treat will be on the line to explain the changes to us.
That is correct. Thank you. Jim, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I am,
perfect.
Jimmy.
Can you go ahead and call up the
TIF district. So,
Thank you, Kevin.
thanks, guys. So this is the presentation that I provided, Jim Treat with Cronin Associates, to the Redevelopment Commission on November 15th. And It was 3 resolutions. Those were all 3 unanimously adopted by the Redevelopment Commission and then subsequently approved also by the APC, the changes to those TIF areas. If you determine you will approve these resolutions tonight, it will allow us to go back to the RDC and have a public hearing on the 20th of December. And after that public hearing, they can have final adoption and we can get this filed in the county with county officials and get it done this year. So we are on a tight deadline, but that's the process we need to go through. And it's the same process anytime we amend or create or change a TIF area in any way. So we're going to touch on, go ahead, John, or whoever's doing the slides. I can't control them from here, but the 3 areas that we want to do some corrections to or cleanup to are, first of all, Leonard Commons Economic Development Area. That TIF area was created back in 2008 and has never generated any tax increment revenue. And what we want to do is we want to dissolve the TIF area and then after the first of the year, create a new TIF area. And I'll show you the map there in a second and we'll go through that. The second one in a little more detail. So that one we want to discontinue and then restart after the first of the year with a specific parcel in mind. The Aurora area is the second area we want to do some corrections to. That area did receive some small amounts of annual increment annually, but because of the residential development that's happened in that area in the recent years, that TIF revenue has all gone away. So we want to fix that with our actions that are in process now. And the third one is the Eagleton TIF area, which has been a very strong area, but now there is some replatting in that area and some economic or some residential development, and we want to remove those parcels so that does not in any way inhibit the growth of that TIF area. So John, if you could go to the next one. And this is the map. Leonard Commons, again, formed in 2008, has never created any tax increment because the only development, the only property that are improved there are the residential properties. And as you all know, you cannot capture values for TIF purposes from residential properties. And so, but what's happening is very exciting. We're finally going to get some movement on the undeveloped area, which is the uncircled area. The large one in this area has been acquired by a new developer. As of the first of the year, it's going to become one parcel and it's going to be reclassified as commercial. So what we're proposing in this resolution is to dissolve the Leonard Commons area as it was originally created, and then after the first of the year, when the county defines this as one commercial parcel, we're going to come back to you and the Redevelopment Commission and ask you to create a brand new TIF area, which will enable us to capture all the development that's currently under discussion right now with the new developer for that area. And next slide, John. This illustrates, this is what's going on. This is an extract from 5 years worth of reports, TIF reports from the county. And because of the way the county is now handling residential parcels that are left in a TIF area, this is what we're seeing in some of these areas that I want to bring your attention to. And that center column that's called current AV is the total actual AV of all the parcels in that area, land, and then on the residential, the improvements. But because of the way they're handling the revaluations each year of the residential properties, see the base area is way in excess. The calculated base is in excess of the current AV. So what it's doing is all the value in this area is in base because it's residential, but because this base calculation is exceeding the actual total AV, you've got negative captured AV. It's up to $2 million now. So what that means is when we do start getting some non-residential development in this area, if we don't change things, we're going to lose the first $2 million of captured AV without cleaning this up. So that's the situation in the Leonard Commons area, and we will be coming back to you after the first of the year with a new TIF area with one new commercial-only parcel that will be ready to develop and will capture all the development in that area. Next slide shows you the map of Aurora. And again, most of the Aurora, there's Aurora 1 and Aurora 2. Most of the development that you're seeing that's occurring has been along 31 and Aurora 2. And what's happened in the meantime is Aurora 1, they platted that significant portion of the area in the Lennar folks have made the Coventry neighborhood, which because of the residential development that's occurred there, it's now created another negative assessed value, or a negative incremental value. So if we don't remove those residential parcels from the area, John, go ahead to the next slide, if you would. If we don't remove the residential parcels, what's happened there is the revaluation of the new homes that have built there have created this huge base value which exceeds the current AV, and we've got a negative $14 million in assessed value. So in order to correct this and get this area back on track, we want to delete the 100 and some residential parcels that have been developed out there. We're going to completely get rid of the area, and then we're going to create a new Aurora 1 with just the 11, I think it's 11 or 12 remaining commercial but undeveloped parcels that will develop. So then as that area develops with the rest of Aurora, we'll be able to capture just commercial development as TIF areas were designed. So that's the reason we are dealing with this on Aurora 1, because of this big negative capture. And the third area is a very successful area, is the Eagleton TIF area is already contributing significantly to the abilities of the RDC to fund economic development projects. It's the dark green area adjacent to Grand Junction expansion area. So this area has been doing quite well, but go to the next slide, John. The area that's circled on this slide and that's highlighted here, Gristmill Trails, has just recently been platted out, and a portion of it is starting to be developed. There are additional parcels that are slated to be developed in future years that are shown on this map. And what we want to do is we want to remove those residential parcels now before they begin to erode the captured assessed value that we've attained and continue to attain. Go to the next number slide, John, on this one. I'll try to keep moving quickly. So you can see in the last 5 years, we've more than doubled the TIF revenues from this area. It's a trend we want to continue, and we don't want that base to get out of whack like it did on those other areas that I showed you earlier a minute ago, and take away any of the captured assessed value from the improvement. And another thing we've done in this that I do want to point out, in this TIF resolution, we are also including a stipulation that in the future, if additional properties, undeveloped properties in Eagleton are platted and made residential, that the county will automatically take those out of the TIF area. So, and that wording in that legal language is one that was recommended by the county. So in this instance, you will not have to come back, or the RDC will not have to come back and do future amendments just to remove additional residential parcels. So that will become automated in this process. So again, those were all unanimously adopted by the RDC, and we would ask for your support to continue to move those forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Did you have any questions for Jim or myself?
Counselors, any questions?
Do we have to do a separate motion on each one of them?
Yeah. Yes, please.
We have to do each one of them individually. So we'll begin then with Resolution 21-140, approving the Plan Commission order on the Eagleton TIF. Again, this deals with the removal of residential parcels from the Eagleton Economic Development Area. Do I have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy, call the roll, please.
Cindy Spalcherik.
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next resolution, 21-141, approving of the Plan Commission order on Lantern Commons TIF amendment. And again, this involves terminating residential expansion from the Lantern Commons Economic Development Area. Do I have a
I move to approve Resolution 21-141.
Now, I have one question about our apartments residential.
No.
Okay,
Or 2%.
Those could be, no, those could be tips, sir.
okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Scott Fry, seconded by Troy Patton. Cindy, would you call the vote, please?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next resolution, 21-142, approving the Plan Commission order on Aurora Tiff Amendment Adoption Consideration. This motion is to dissolve the Aurora 1 allocation area and create an Aurora 3 allocation area in the East Side Economic Development area. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve 21-142.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Fry. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is ordinance 21-54, annexing certain real estate to the city of Westfield. This is up for council introduction this evening, a public hearing this evening, followed by adoption consideration on January 10th. And I believe Kevin Todd is going to address us.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. This item on your agenda this evening is a 100% voluntary annexation request for a little bit over 3 acres for property located at 1602 East 203rd Street. The item this evening was properly noticed for a public hearing this evening and will be eligible for your adoption consideration at your next meeting. The fiscal plan will be associated with this item at your subsequent meeting as well. The petitioner is here this evening, does not plan to make a presentation, but would be available for questions.
Okay,
Thanks.
you, Kevin. All right, I will open the public hearing at 8:31.
No cards. No.
No cards, no comments, no emails. Let's give it about 30 seconds. We'll close the public hearing at 8:32. Counselors, are there any questions tonight?
One question. Kevin, you did mention that it would be available for adoption at our next meeting, and that's the 27th right now. And this has our consideration on for January 10th.
Oh, I think we didn't realize that there would be a 27th meeting, or December 27th meeting. I think the January date is correct.
Okay.
So my apologies.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we will wait to see this come back before us in January. And let's move on to the next item, ordinance 21-57, which is amending the Westfield Fire Department's fire prevention ordinance. It's up for council introduction this evening and adoption consideration on December 27th. And we've got Chief Gaylor to give us background on this ordinance.
Good evening, Rob Gaylor, Westfield Fire Department. About 18 months ago, the council approved the City of Westfield Fire Ordinance. Through that process, it gets approved locally, goes to the state for final approval. The state did not approve it at that time, so over the last 18 months, we have been working with the state on fixing the ordinance to match and meet, so everybody's on the same level playing field and agrees. And to present that tonight, this is the ordinance that we would like the city to adopt. For questions, I'm going to refer to Fire Marshal Jim Roberts about the ordinance specific.
Thank you, Chief. Fire Marshal Roberts?
Yes.
Yes.
Appreciate it. As Chief Gaylor mentioned, when we first presented this and took it to the Indiana Fire and Building Commission. They did not approve of a number of issues within that. Since then, the process has been changed with the Fire and Building Services Commission. At this point, they review ahead of time, so they found their faults with that and so corrected those somewhat. So they have reviewed it at this point in time, have agreed with everything in place after a great number of back and forth meetings with them. Finally got something we can work with on our end and the state's end, as long as the council agrees with it as well. Is there any, that, I'll take any questions you might have on it.
Chief, councilors? Questions, comments? Well, I guess we don't have any questions this evening. I know there's a lot of changes in there. And
Yes,
I wasn't able personally to get through them all this week, but I will definitely do it prior to our next meeting.
Yeah, so originally, the city ordinance was from the late 80s, what we were operating off of, and then the ordinance that we presented about 18 months ago, freshened it up. Long story short, what we're presenting to you tonight, or introducing to you tonight, has been approved by the state, and it's there for you guys to review. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, that ordinance will be back up for adoption consideration at our next meeting on the 27th. Moving on, our next item is ordinance 21-58, transferring of funds. It's up for council introduction this evening and adoption consideration on the 27th. Cindy Gossard, can you explain what this is about to us?
Yeah, this is just something we do every December, so I can clean up, like, within the departments, if there's negatives. I can't close with negatives, so I just transfer the funds in the appropriations. There are a couple times that I've had to transfer from one fund to another, but then after we close the next year, I transfer them back if it's, depending on where it came from.
So this is just a
It's
normal,
just something we
standard
do
cleanup
every year.
Okay.
To close the books.
Any questions? Councilors? Okay, Cindy, we'll look forward to hearing about that at our next meeting. Next item under new business, ordinance 21-59, Bel Canto PUD District. It's up for a council introduction this evening, followed by an APC hearing on January 18th. APC recommendation on February 22nd, and probably back before this council on February 28th. And I believe, I thought John Duberchesky, but I'm in full.
Thank you, President
Okay.
Johns. I'm going to mix it up a little bit
All right.
this evening.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you, yes. Thank you, President Johns. We're mixing up a little bit this evening. For the record, Jim Schinover, attorney with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. We are representing the petitioner, Bel Canto Asset Growth Fund LLC, and with me tonight on behalf of the petitioner is Sandy Avery and Brandon Avery as part of their development team. Also with us is John Davishewitz from our office. We had previously provided all the council members general information about this request over the last few weeks, and shortly after we filed. As a result of that, I'll attempt to keep this introduction presentation fairly brief. With that said, the first exhibit that you have before you is an aerial photograph of the subject real estate. It consists of 23 acres outlined in, get my pointer going, outlined here in yellow. You will see that the site is immediately adjacent and south of David Brown Drive. Along our western perimeter is the Roush Auto Dealership. Of course, we have frontage along US 31. Further to our south is the Woodside community neighborhood. And then we are also surrounded adjacent to us to the east and then over here to the south, two different apartment communities, the Hamilton Square and Valley Farms apartment communities that are adjacent to us. Bel Canto is a successful multi-family developer with developments throughout many parts of the country. Further, one of its two founders and principals, Jennifer Nevitt. Miss Nevitt grew up here in Hamilton County, and after embarking on her successful development career, She was very interested to come back to the county that she grew up in with the opportunity to develop a high-quality legacy type of multifamily community that will have a mixed use component to it, which will be in the form of a commercial outlot. Today, the site is zoned GBPD, Business Plan Development, and as explained, and you'll see on the site plan, the proposal is for a multifamily apartment community that will have an outlot for a commercial use in the future. Kevin, if you could go to the next exhibit. This is the proposed site plan. Again, you'll see David Brown here to our north, 31 adjacent residential or apartment communities, the Roush dealership. As you look at this colored site plan, again, this would be the location of the proposed commercial outlot. Sandy has been in what I've been told are fairly serious discussions with the potential end user. She's working, continue to work on that effort. Hopefully, we may be in a position to report something as we get to the Plan Commission phase, but she's diligent in working toward that and has a lot of interest in it. The other component that you'll see as you enter into the site off David Brown Drive is the design of the road feature. In preliminary discussions with planning staff, strong suggestions were made to design that roadway in such a manner that it could connect further to the south if development to the south were to occur at some point in the future. Our clients have no proposal regarding that. Their proposal is only for the subject real estate. But based on that advice and guidance from staff, you will see that's why we have arrived at the road design that is shown on this plan. That would include 120 feet of width for the roadway or the right-of-way that would accommodate that. Some other elements that you can see on the site plan is the fronts of the apartment community buildings are facing toward the roadway that will serve internal to the site, and then also facing further to the west over to US 31. That site alignment allows us to, as you can see, put the parking fields more internal to the site, so they're not visible from adjacent roadways. We also have, and I'll have some photos to quickly show with you, this particular area right here is the Amenity Center, the Clubhouse Center. But again, this is a very high quality, aesthetically pleasing with the latest in technology upgrades. So that Amenity Center will have, in addition to what you may see customarily, such as pool facilities, it'll also have very nice internal space, kitchen area for food preparation if people gather at the clubhouse, but more importantly, internet cafe and the ability to hold small meetings in that facility if you're working from home. If you could go to the next slide, Kevin. Thank you. If you can reduce those, yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, there we go. There we go, you're fine, thank you. These next exhibits are illustrations showing the appearance as it would face toward the west, toward 31. Some items of interest. First of all, these will be 4-story apartment homes, but they will be all served by internal elevators. They also have expansive balconies, but they're recessed into the building itself to present a better aesthetic appearance. I would describe this design as more of a corporate type of design as opposed to what you might see with a typical residential suburban apartment complex. Belcanto is not going for that look. They're going for a more corporate look with a fresher, more upgraded visual appeal. It's also been Belcanto's experience that this type of building design, along again with the high quality interior finishes, full service amenity, and those types of offerings, they found that the type of residents that are typically attracted to this type of community would be young professionals, millennials, folks who are maybe approaching the empty nester stage, wanting to downsize, some folks as they approach maybe their more senior years, want to be in a situation where they can lock and leave if needed, but then have all the on-site amenities that they might need. The next exhibit, you'll see some photos. The first set of photos, this is a photo of the Community Amenity Center, so you'll see the type of layout, high-quality finishes. You'll see that little conference room, as I described earlier, that residents could use for business meetings. Also going down further, you'll see rendering of the clubhouse or exterior portions, the type of pool facilities that would be provided for a community like this. Also, there would be bicycle garage storage areas and other types of amenities that we've listed in our materials. The final few exhibits that Kevin is showing you are now interior finishes of actual apartment units. These would be 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartments, but the 3-bedroom apartments would be the fewest type of units they would offer, more geared to 1s and 2s. And again, one of the important features that Belcanto has realized through the last few years and their experience as developers, each one of the apartments, regardless of if it's 1, 2, or 3-bedroom, will have a dedicated den or office type of room. They have found that many of their residents are working from home and need to have an appropriate floor plan and layout to be effective at home. And so that's another design feature that they will offer in all these homes. In conclusion, we have received feedback from many of you, and we welcome any additional feedback that you can offer tonight. This matter the next phase would be appearing before the Plan Commission on January 18th. We would have a neighborhood meeting prior to the January 18th Plan Commission, and we'll be sure to send you that invitation for that neighborhood meeting so you can have it and attend if you're able or interested. We appreciate your time tonight, and will remain available for any other questions or comments that you may have for us before we take the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Questions, comments, Councilor?
Well, I do want to say I've talked to the petitioner's representative, and I actually requested that this not be brought forward and to not potentially have resources spent when I didn't think there was a good chance of it moving forward through the process. One of the biggest problems is that it's a multifamily residential use primarily in our corridor, in this, commercial corridor that we have reserved. Specifically in this area, that's been, a big kind of goal in our comprehensive plan. So to have that taken up with yet more apartments, which we've just approved hundreds and hundreds of apartments in this general area, it's not something I can support. So, thanks.
I want to follow that up just very quickly. And again, just point of clarity for what I think I heard, and I just want to ask you point blank and have you answer it. These are all 100% apartments for rent, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing here to own, okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I would only add that I share the same concerns that Councilman Spelcherk does, and I also made the same comments to the petitioner's representative early on, so. But I thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing no other comments, we look forward to seeing you at the APC, please.
Thank you. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is Ordinance 21-60, Osborne Trails PUD Amendment 3. It's up for a council introduction tonight. APC hearing, initial hearing on January 18th, with the APC secondary hearing on February 22nd, and back to this body on March 14th. Kevin, you gonna have a?
Yeah, I think Chris Wilkes with Holiday is going to present here. Essentially, this is a PUD amendment to the Osborne Trails PUD ordinance, specifically for the West Fork Whiskey site in regard to signage. It's a request to have a little bit of an increase in signage, both to the monument sign square footage and height, and the some internal circulation signage. So, Mr. Wilkes, I don't know if you have anything additional you want to add to that. I'm trying to load your image here.
Thank you. No, Kevin, I think you captured it pretty well, but for the record, Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties at 231 South College Avenue in Indianapolis. Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to elaborate a little bit on the ordinance or the amendment that we have in front of you here. As some of you may know, the West Fork Whiskey Craft Distillery project lies within the Osborne Trails PUD. And with that PUD is silent in terms of signage. It refers back to the UDO. So when we were looking at a monument sign for the project, when we looked at the UDO, the UDO actually specifies that a sign base for a monument sign be consisted of masonry, and those materials would be complementary to the facade of the building. Well, if you look at our building, we actually think a monument sign with a concrete base, we don't have much masonry, if at all. We thought the concrete base would be more integrated with the building itself. So we are offering or addressing that through an amendment with the Osborne Trails that will still reference the UDO in terms of signage, except specifically allow for a monument sign with this exhibit attached to bring clarity as to what would be permitted on that site. Additionally, as Kevin mentioned, directional signage also defaults to the UDO, and under that UDO, it says that those type of signs can be no larger than 2 square feet. We want to put 2 signs along Horton Road, along those 2 entrances. And so what we're proposing, and also the UDO says it cannot be any higher than 3 feet off the ground. So what we're proposing here is larger signs to safely direct customers and traffic into the site. 2 feet doesn't seem really large enough to do that. So we do have the sign, and also this, as with the monument sign, the amendment will reference this specific type of sign in the amendment, so you can actually see what we're proposing here. So you can see what we have is signs that are 2 feet, actually 5 feet off the ground, and the dimensions would be 2 feet 6 inches and by 5. So that's it. And I think.
Yeah, I have a huge question.
Yes.
Go back to your other exhibit. It looks to me like you've spelled whiskey the way Indiana University spells Indiana on their basketball jerseys.
Yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Is this a Purdue type of phonics, or what are you doing?
No, that is actually how they spell it. And I don't ask questions, Mr. Mayor. It's just what, right, that's right. That could have been maybe, that's right. Maybe that's what happened. But actually, I just noticed that the other day. So I've been dealing with him for like 2 years. I don't think I noticed that. But yeah, so that's the sign as we would present.
That's exactly the way it's got to be.
Yes, that's right, that's right. And we know that. So we've been really careful with this exhibit, so. With that, I'll take any questions. I think our next step would be to have this discussion with the Plan Commission on January 18th.
Right.
So,
Thanks, Chris. Councilors, questions? Comments? No? I guess we'll see you at the APC then.
that's right. Okay, great.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. Next item, ordinance 21-61, the Policies and Procedures Manual. Some for a council introduction tonight, adoption consideration on the 27th. Do we have?
I'll take it, Mr. Johns. Mr. Bertrand couldn't be here. I know he and Blake and HR Director and staff worked very closely for a while on this to get it updated to reflect Supreme Court decisions, the other statutory updates, and there's a lot going on there. So I would say, take the time to look through it, and if you have any questions, direct them to Todd and Blake, and I'm sure they'd be happy to kind of walk through why and the how and how they got to certain things within this document.
Is there a red line copy?
Yes, sir. It should be attached. If it isn't, I'd be happy to get it to you.
Okay.
The red line
It should be in there.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
is.
Good.
Yep. And I've read through it already. It looks to me I understood everything, and it looks to me like about 2/3 of the changes have to do with our health program for city employees.
That was my assumption, yeah, and there were a couple that folks, that when they read it, the public especially, are probably gonna stand out. It came up in the RDC meeting, the expansion of some of the classes in discrimination policy, for example. Again, that's reflective of Supreme Court decision last year, so things like that, if you have any further questions, I'm sure I'll be happy to chat.
Thank you.
Yep.
Something I was hoping we could clear up, and unfortunately, what I was looking at didn't have page numbers, so I can't tell you what page numbers this was, but it was under, talking about like comp time and for non-exempt, and it's just this, it was confusing to me because it says shall be allowed to accrue a balance of up to 40 hours. Anything in excess paid in overtime until balance below 40. But then later it says accrued time will be carried over from calendar year to calendar year. And it says this kind of throughout several sections dealing with that. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out when it says carries over from calendar year to calendar year, but then you're not supposed to get above 40. So can someone just tell me, how does that work?
You want me to take it?
By all means, counsel. I'm not gonna try.
So I'm.
You deal with it.
I do. I deal with it quite a bit. So the way, at least in practice, the way it works is you are eligible, you as a non-exempt, or a non-exempt employee, a non-salaried employee, can take time and a half comp time and accumulate up to 40 hours. So once you get to the 40 hours, anything above that, say we have another snowstorm and you're working 12-hour days, anything above that is required to be paid in overtime pay, so time and a half pay. Now, snowstorm's over, you can take some days off, you reduce your accumulated comp time down below 40, then you can accumulate again. At the end of the year, you are eligible to roll over 40 hours of comp time, but you can't amass any more than that. Does that make sense?
It
So-
kind of does, it's just the way it's worded is confusing, because it does sound like you can just carry over 40 hours every year.
You can, if you have accumulated 40 hours. You can technically carry over 40 hours of vacation and 40 hours of comp time if you have amassed that.
So I mean, in 10 years, you could have 400 hours.
No,
No
it
more
is
than 40
maxed at
hours
40
on-
hours
okay.
every year, yes.
Well, that's where it's just, I
Yeah.
wish we could just clean up the language somehow. And this isn't just for non-exempt or something. I mean, this goes through for everybody, because this section is there in all of it.
It does, and I can't speak to the police and fire, the public safety folks. For exempt employees, you don't get the time and a half rate, but you can amass hour for hour, flex time is what we call it, up to 40 hours. That can also be carried over.
But you can't, again, get 400 hours in 10 years.
No, it is capped at 40. You can only carry over 40.
That's where it's unclear.
Yeah.
There's not a
Yeah.
cap, because it says does carry over from calendar year to calendar year, which leads my brain to believe that you could just keep accruing this.
Which I am personally in support of that. But in practice, it's always been capped at 40, and
Well,
say
let's just add that to actually say it then,
Okay.
just so it's clear.
Very good.
This is for exempt and non-exempt both, is what you're saying.
Well, it's for all of it. It says
So-
it like 5 or 6
So
different times.
non-exempt is an hour and a half rate, so a time and a half rate. So they get an hour and a half of comp time for every hour that they work over. Exempt salaried folks is hour for hour. That's largely the only difference. So they call it flex time, the other's compensatory
40
time.
hours is the limit, no matter where you are.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we will see this ordinance for adoption
Take a look at it.
on
If you
December
have questions,
27th.
Get them back to us.
Cool. Next item, ordinance 21-62, the 2022 fee schedule, introduced this evening, up for adoption, consideration the 27th.
And I'll take it, Mr. Johns. Again, it's a pretty normal exercise across the state. Here, I think it's a little different this year. It used to be combined for some reason. I can't quite explain with some other policies, updates. This year it's separated, and tried to make it a little bit easier to comprehend and to determine. All the fee schedules are right in there. as they were provided to us by the various departments. So it should be pretty self-explanatory. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up.
Okay. Thank you, Manny.
Yes, sir.
The next item is 2021 write-offs.
Oh, wait, can we go back?
Oh, sure.
I had some comments that I just wanted to get out there really quick on this one. And this is one for Manny, probably. It does mention an Exhibit A in this document, and there is none attached, but it actually says that that's the special event policy, PK01-11. So can we add that on there for our purposes, because it does say it's here and it's not.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it wouldn't be. Absolutely.
There's also several things in here I was having questions about. Talks about zoning violations, which is different because that's talked about in documents that are not this document, at least legally, I think, you guys would know better than I would. But question, this does mention $25 to $300 for each violation. And so I was wondering, how is that assessed? So say there's a tree preservation area, and somebody comes in and cuts down 10 trees. Is that one violation, or is that 10 violations? And is it $25 or $300?
Where are you? Sorry, I'm on, there are 12 pages of it. Page 3.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
It's just in general, I'm wondering, how do those fines get assessed?
Oh, sure. So, oh, go ahead, Kevin. No, please.
You got to deal with it.
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen very often. This is, in my experience, this is something that, it's not something that we assess, it's something that that gets assessed if something has to go through the court process and there ends up being a judgment at the end of that court process, then we have the ability within this range to tell the judge what the fine or penalty should be based on the ordinances that we have in place. So we will then say, we'll give them a total amount with a breakdown of how many violations, how many days, how much staff time has been involved with addressing this issue, and give them a number, and they'll either take it or reduce it, actually has been my experience usually. But so then it's assessed at the end of a court process through enforcement. We don't have the ability to ticket or issue tickets or citations out in the field.
So unless it rises to the point of going to court, you can get away with any violation, really?
Well, no, I mean, there are separate violations for depending on, as outlined here, what you may do. For your example, the request, once you seek enforcement action, would be per tree, right? We'd seek the most we can as allowed by our fee schedule, and the court would determine, like Kevin says, mostly it's to reduce it, but the court would determine what's reasonable. So this gives us the ability, as a baseline, to have something reasonable to present to the court that we can say, here's what we need. And the process, again, has been streamlined, so the staff does the vast majority of it, and then you show up in court and you ask for all this information, and you ask for the relief you're seeking. We would always seek the most possible, knowing that the court will probably reduce it to some degree.
It's a tricky thing for us as a municipality. I mean, I see zoning violations every single day. And it's incredibly frustrating to me. I know that they know they're not gonna really get in trouble for it. And so, I mean, I just wish that we could find a way to actually do something about some of it, because it doesn't get rectified.
Sure,
And
and it depends on the type of zoning violation, right? I've been involved on both sides of that. And there are some very robust, in your code and codes across the state, some very robust mechanisms that have daily penalties, for example, of $1,500 depending on the zoning violation. For example, some eco zones, some overlay districts that are eco zones have additional ones on top of that. They have attorney fee shifting provisions. They have the ability to go straight into court versus doing this procedure where you go through the BZA and everything else. So there are mechanisms. It's just how far do you want to push those? And that's really a governing body / staff determination, because it takes up a heck of a lot of time to have somebody, usually for a city this size, it's several people full-time going out and noticing violations and then going through that stair-step process. So that's something I think everybody should, it's a great point, because you should consider how involved, or whether it needs, another two code enforcement officials to go and police that kind of thing. Because otherwise, you're dependent on people telling you, calling in and saying, hey, this person built a shed that's
Right, and I
right
realize
next to the
that
road,
that's
et
what we
cetera.
have, and I
Right.
mean, that puts the burden on the citizens,
To a large degree, that's right, to kind of police it themselves.
Yeah.
But this document at least forms the baseline for ultimately hoping to recover and recoup some of those fees.
But-
Okay,
But the remedy is still through a court system. There's,
Right.
I mean, unless there's other
Unless they
alternatives.
voluntarily pay for your, notice of violation,
Right.
which
So
is
it-
not
so it's
often.
not necessarily immediate remedy. It's still a little bit of a process to it.
a few other things. There's the topsoil replacement inspection, and I remember us having a lot of discussions about this. Does that inspection involve actually checking for the organic matter content and all those things that we discussed need to happen?
I don't know off the top of my head how that goes. We can get more detail and get you an answer.
So that inspection would occur in Kevin's team with the building inspection group, not necessarily the public works team. We do erosion control inspections and monitoring and management. We don't do the final inspection associated with the yards.
So is this even getting done at all?
Also don't know the answer to that question. I'll check with our building team and see.
Okay. If you could get back to me, I'd like to know the answer to that question. And also the demolition permit, we have one standard fee of $150. And for the life of me, I was thinking about it, and I said, a tiny little shed or carport or something is the same fee as a big giant industrial building. And I thought, should that actually be the case?
Well, for us, it's the same amount of work, frankly.
Really, like looking at Shelby and the $1 million demo plan that they had, or what have you, is the same as
For the
carport?
demo permit portion, really all we're checking is to make sure that utility hookups are properly or disconnected, and yeah, I mean, there's really not a lot of difference between a large demo versus a small demo.
Okay. Are we pretty confident that we're generally in line with our surrounding communities in what we're charging for our fees?
No,
No.
we're not. Actually, we're low. But this was not a wholesale relook at our fees. We've added a handful of fees and made some adjustments to some things that really have been out of line that we've noticed, but we did not do a wholesale relook. That's something we can do if you would like for us to, but we did not do that for this proposal. But I do believe we are low, at least our fees are low compared to our neighbors.
And as it pertains to the public works and the fees that we assess, whether it be per plan review or inspection services largely, we are pretty well in line. We did an adjustment a couple years ago to balance us out. But we certainly can look at it again to verify.
Okay. Thank you. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right. Next item, the 2021 write-offs, is Michelle Freed, as I don't see her. This is, Cindy, these are the typical write-offs that are for trash and whatnot?
Yeah, whatever, just, it looks like. maybe
These are
bills.
trash, stormwater
Yeah.
that go out with our quarterly bills. These are people that have left the rest of us paying some of this. It's determined to be small enough that it's not worth collecting, worth the cost of collection. It's an annual exercise.
Do we need to vote on this?
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve these guest service write-offs?
So moved. I'll second that.
Motion made by Jake Gilbert, seconded by Scott Fry. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeri,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next item on our agenda is guests, any residents who wish to address the council this evening? Do we have any cards, Kevin?
I've got 2 cards at the moment. First one is Dave Miller.
Hello, I'm Dave Miller. I live at 15960 Bridgewater Club Boulevard in Carmel, 46033. Have been attending council meetings for about 3 decades, and I find it interesting, some of the things that go on. And tonight I found really perplexed about the fees. And as a businessman here in Westfield, I know we all have fees and costs, but people need to get paid. But I think the question is that I have to you as a council is that we had something added new this year. And what we had is your own attorney for the council. And I remember back probably this summer when Mr. Patton challenged Mayor Cook about how much it costs for the attorney fees. And that went on and back and forth. So tonight, I guess I have a question is, what are the new fees that we have for Ms. Poindexter as the attorney that we as citizens are paying for?
I think we'd be willing to share those with you, but I don't know them off the top of my head, so I'd have to look them up, but I'd be happy to respond at the next meeting.
Okay.
Are you talking about the retainer, Dave?
You mean the year-end total fees?
The
for this
fees,
year?
because we've just talked about the fees for attorneys Taft, but no one talked about the new fees that we had for Ms. Poindexter.
Okay. I would be happy to share those with you. We just need to look them up.
Okay. But you don't know off the top of your head what it is?
Top of my head, I do not know. I know that we're under budget, we're considerably under budget, but I don't know how much under.
We should announce them at the next meeting.
We should, we'll be happy to.
Do you know what the budget was for this year?
80,000?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 80.
83 is what I thought, but maybe.
Because I remember Joe saying said, whatever we use, and we won't use her too much, and it won't be a lot of money. And that was the introduction that we got as citizens, when Ms. Poindexter was.
Well, I believe I was right, Dave. I believe I was correct. She is under budget.
$80,000, is that a good amount of money, you think?
Well, it's a heck of a lot less than that.
Well, this is new money.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot less than a million.
Dave, I think it's a really good question. I mean, the bad part is we have to have our own attorney. I mean, we shouldn't even have to. But the problem is we can't work with the city's attorney because they're not conducive to working with us. And that's pretty evident by what you heard up here earlier. And I mean, truthfully, no offense, Ann, I wish we didn't have Ann. I mean, but.
For the last number of years as a city council, though, we haven't had an attorney.
That's right, but we don't feel like we're being represented at all. I mean, and I'm saying we collectively. Maybe some people think that Taft is representing us. But clearly, as I think everybody in this room probably knows, I don't think it's even close. And I'd say there's other people that probably agree with that. So,
Okay.
but I think we should, I have no problem. I mean, we should share that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I consider $80,000 a lot of money as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Next card, Larry Clarino.
Larry Clarino, 2533 Live Oak Lane. Y'all got a bunch of emails from me. I'm here to talk about the self-raise that you all did. And it really makes me sad, the way this whole thing was done. Let me make it clear, I'm not making a judgment whether you should have gotten a raise or not. That's something you guys have to decide. But at the last meeting, November 22nd, on the agenda, Mr. Johns, please pay attention here. On the agenda, a public hearing was listed. Manny said a public hearing was not required. He didn't say it wasn't an option, he just said it wasn't required. You totally ignored that line on the agenda that said there was going to be a public hearing. You just, poof, made it go away. In communications with you guys, Ms. Bulgaric and Mr. Johns said that it was a mistake, a mistake. As of this afternoon, if you go back to the agenda of the last meeting, it's still there. It's never been removed. Therefore, by your own rules, you violated the law because your rules say that any change to the agenda has to happen at the very beginning of the meeting. It did not. So, that particular ordinance had no input from the public. You guys just decided, oh, we're just going to give everybody a raise. Maybe I'm so cynical because I lived in Chicago, I lived in Connecticut for a long time. What are you hiding? Why don't you want public input? I want to thank counselors that voted no on that. You have my thorough thanks. Mr. Willis, the comments that you made. But what are you hiding? Why didn't you ask for public input on the raise? And that goes for the mayor's office too. And certainly the clerk treasurer. You all got my emails. Every single one. By the way, clerk treasurer, when you use the email address that's on the website, it gets bounced. Well, I'm just telling you
Okay.
that. That's why I
Because
sent
I
it,
didn't
that's
get
why
your
I
emails.
sent the emails to your personal email address and not to the one that's listed.
I didn't get them, I got a
Well,
copy.
it went to your Yahoo.
Well, I got a copy, I don't use Yahoo anymore, I got a copy from
Well,
Mike.
your emails get bounced, so the public cannot talk to the clerk treasurer's department.
I've been having.
I don't
trouble
want to
with
hear
my
about
email.
that, okay?
Well,
So
then you shouldn't
anyway-
have mentioned it.
Pardon?
I said, then you shouldn't have mentioned it.
Okay, let's discuss it. Why do they have that? You should.
Well, I don't know,
cor-
we need to talk to IT.
No,
because
you
it's-
need to talk to
Okay,
IT.
I have talked to IT, so there's an issue with my emails, so
Fine.
we'll figure it out.
Anyway, Mr. Johns, what are you hiding? You care to answer?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Kevin, do we have any other cards?
We do not.
Okay. Moving on. Comments from the clerk treasurer's office.
No, not now.
Okay. City councilors, do we have a report? Cindy from the APC?
Sure. We met December 6th. We had the town-run PUD up for consideration, but we, as the APC, we used the time to work with the petitioner to address the additional concerns that came up, and that will come back for recommendation at the next meeting, I suspect. We held public hearings for Casey Corner, development plan and primary plat. Those are the townhomes near Ditch and Casey that were through here not too long ago. The Springwater PUD, introduced at the last council meeting, and then the South Park Industrial Development, overall development plan and primary plat on South Park Drive. So that was that. I can also give you the ARPA, since I'm already talking. ARPA, we had our public information session last week. We only had about 7 or 8 in attendance, but we did have, I think, close to 50 views on YouTube, so at least a little bit is getting through there. The legal consultants from Barnes and Thornburg, they gave a summary of all things ARPA. They did a really good job. You could go back and listen to it if you're interested. And we talked a little bit about what our council has now approved in our plan and how we intend to move forward. So things did come up that will be good discussion topics for this coming Friday's ARPA committee meeting. That's at 2 o'clock in this room. So it'll be right before the dedication of the Grand Junction Plaza. That's it.
Thanks, Cindy. Do we have a report from the Oversight Committee?
No. No report.
Finance Committee?
No, we did not have a December meeting. We will be back on our regularly scheduled program in January.
Any other council comments?
I got just a quick update on the library. A couple things have happened that's changed from a few months ago. We had 2 public hearings, and we are now going to be using the proceeds of the sale of the library into the actual cost of the new library, which is going to give us a little bit more buying power with the shift in material costs and land and all that other stuff that's happening right now in our economy. It's going to give us the ability to do the library we want to do versus cutting things short because of our budget. So that was approved after 2 public hearings. We approved that in our meeting this last month. So that's coming. So that will add roughly $3 to $4 million to the project. We are also meeting with the leadership from the school tomorrow to hopefully finalize the purchase of the library by the school system. So we're moving forward with that and excited about what the future holds for library.
Thank you, Councilman Willis. Any other comments? I make a comment, let's see, a couple comments. We're making some good progress. I attended a second meeting with MKSK. That's the consulting firm that is working with the Downtown Westfield Association to look at the massing of buildings downtown, suggested routes for our streets and turning alleys into streets in our thoroughfare plan, and also looking at trying to put together some of the connectivity with respect to our trail systems. So they seem to be making some good progress, and I think that their goal is to have a full report out to this council and to the city as a whole, I think in March or April of this year. So that's pretty positive. Wednesday of this week, there's going to be a meeting with the Streetscape Committee, which was started by the APC, a couple members of the APC, and that's going to be looking at different streetscape needs around moving out from Grand Junction, looking at trying to have some uniformity to our park benches, if you will, street lights, street treatments, and looking at different areas of the city with respect to, do we want Park Street, do we want to make that more of an area than just one street, and looking at Westfield as a whole. So there's some good, really positive vibes going on with the downtown area right now, and more of that will be coming out. I know the mayor's been working hand and shoulder with us on that one too. So the other comment I have is a little bit more of a negative comment, unfortunately, but I am happy that we're finally putting this appropriation issue behind us. I apologize that it's taken so long. I hope we could have done this back in October. I'm personally disappointed that we started at a number of around 650,000. We're up to $1 million now for this appropriation. I know that when we first brought it up, we did the best we could. We as a council expressed our displeasure, expressed the idea that we didn't want to rob our piggy bank of 700,000, so we lowered the budget by 700,000. And so the question, I got a couple calls this week, well, should we lower the budget by another 300,000 to make up for it? Now the fact that appropriation up to $1 million, I don't know that that's necessary at this point. I like to put it behind us, and I'm happy that the appropriation was approved tonight, and I'm hopeful that we can get go through the invoices, have everything paid by the end of the year, and move ahead. As I mentioned before, I think we have an opportunity and really a duty to look at our process, a lot of our processes, financial processes specifically, going into next year. And I look forward to working with the administration and the clerk's department to get that accomplished with our body here. So those are my comments this evening. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Johns. I just, first of all, we have this Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. is the soft grand opening of Grand Junction Plaza, a very long-term project. I think you can see it's taken a lot of shape over in the last few years, and we're really excited to open this up to the public. Obviously, it's going to be much prettier come May and June than what it looks like right now, but it's very close to being completed, and we're excited to get in there. And I just want to say in closing this all out, I think especially this time of year, we can all use a little peace and joy and happiness, remembering what this season is all about. And I want to wish our residents here, our employees, and all the council, clerk, our staff, very Merry Christmas to you all. Good night.